treated the Tasmanians.
Across the gulfs of space, minds that are to our minds as ours are to those of the beasts that perish, intellects vast and cool and unsympathetic, regarded this earth with envious eyes, and slowly and surely drew their plans against us. Oh!
In the War of the Worlds, aliens from the dying planet Mars attack Earth. They come because they have run out of food at home. The people of England are just their first course.
Contemplating your own society in ruins is sort of fascinating, and there is the sort of glee in which he destroys the home counties and London.
Wells showed little sympathy for the annihilated masses. After all, Darwin's theory confirmed that the weakest specimens would perish in time anyway. Wells's real interest lies in the superior Martians. In War of the Worlds, he gives us literature's first truly alien aliens. And boy, are they ugly.
Wells is an enormous fan of the weird and the strange. I mean, he takes great pleasure, as the best science fiction does, in simply describing something really weird. I mean, he loves his monsters, he loves his aliens. The Martians are completely different, completely extraordinary, and described with a real kind of zest for their sheer strangeness.
Wells found inspiration for his aliens in the specimen jars on the laboratory shelves. They were, I now saw, the most unearthly creatures it is possible to conceive. They were huge, round bodies, or rather heads, about 4 feet in diameter, each body having in front of it a face. This face had no nostrils, but it had a pair of very large, dark-colored eyes, and just beneath this, a kind of fleshy beak. In a group around the mouth were 16 slender, almost whip-like tentacles.
He has the idea that as evolution progresses, limbs, organs that are not used are likely to atrophy. They're likely to diminish in size, they're likely to shrink and eventually disappear, whereas organs and limbs that are used are likely to become larger.
The Martians, in short, are us, generations into the future. Does my brain look big in this?
What they basically are is a caricature of what the man of the future might look like, the idea of what we will evolve into. And that's something that's remained very standard throughout science fiction ever since. What it means is big brain and shriveled limbs, things we see in the Mekong in Dandare in the 50s. What's inside the Daleks is very much the same material, isn't it?
Doctor Who has continued to raid the Wellsian toy box. The relationship between the Doctor and the constantly invading Daleks is uncannily like that between Wells's humans and their Martian invaders. Viewers in 2005 enjoyed the story of the last Dalek left in the galaxy. Having been infected by human contact, it decides to kill itself. Rose and the Doctor are witnesses to the death of a species. A tragic end familiar to anyone who has read War of the Worlds.
The more that his narrator comes to observe the Martians and to understand them, the more he realizes that they have something in common with human beings. At the end of the novel, when the narrator walks into the deserted city of London and all he can hear is the keening of the last Martian who is dying on the summit of Primrose Hill, it seems that the final tragedy of the novel is not what happens to human beings, but the death of the Martians.
Here and there they were scattered, nearly 50 altogether, in that great gulf they had made. Overtaken by a death that must have seemed to them as incomprehensible as any death could be. A multitude of dogs fought over the bodies that lay darkly in the depth of the pit.
It does end in a very clever biologist way, which is that the Martians have not evolved to deal with the banal problems of life on Earth, which are bacteria and flesh-eating parasites of different kinds, and they all die of infectious disease. And that, of course, is a very realistic model to take. When Europeans were Martians, in other words, when Europeans first went to Africa, it seemed that at the mouth of every river there stood an angel with a flaming sword that struck down every white man. Now, they didn't know what that was, but it was malaria. It was infectious disease. And white people had not evolved and were not immune to malaria.
Wells had spotted another alien template in the lab. In the first Men in the Moon, he sent a party of eccentric Englishmen up to find a world dominated by the Selenites, a race of giant upright ants with dull, bulging eyes and jointed limbs.
This is a solemn moment in the history of mankind. We're off!
Wells's novel was made with great gusto into a movie in 1964. Much of the plot was changed, but the insectoid aliens were true to the original.
You will discover human ant-like creatures H.G. Wells called selenites, giant gastropods.
Cover, run!
Here, Wells did what almost everybody else has done since, of looking around for earthly things we're a bit creeped out by and making them bigger.
Fearsome moon monsters to be hunted and killed.
The First Men in the Moon was the last novel Wells wrote about life away from Earth, but many writers were to boldly go where he had gone before. If Wells is the godfather of British science fiction, then a writer called Olaf Stapledon is its prodigal son. Soon the earth below me was like a huge circular tabletop, a broad disk of darkness surrounded by stars. I experienced only an increasing exhilaration and a delightful effervescence of thought. The extraordinary brilliance of the stars excited me. The heavens blazed. The major stars were like the headlights of a distant car. The Milky Way, no longer watered down with darkness, was an encircling, granular river of light. Stapledon was the great British science fiction writer of the interwar period. Little known now, he inspired many of the writers to follow. When you read his works, you could feel your brain expanding.
Olaf Stapledon. I wish I could have known him better. But, he did have one of the most far-reaching minds I ever encountered.
Stapledon was so far in advance of his time, because it was long before, for example, we went to the moon or anything like that. All these enormous discoveries we've made hadn't even been thought of. And he was talking about star time and cosmos time. I can't imagine anybody reading that and not being completely blown away. And I was blown away then.
Stapledon was the son of a Liverpool shipping magnate and had experienced the war at first hand as an ambulance driver. He told his future wife, "I am sick of dealing with shattered human beings. Each single little tragedy is such a mere atom of the whole." After the war, he became a teacher at a working man's college. By night, he taught philosophy. By day, he drew up plans for the future history of mankind.
Olaf Stapledon was possibly the biggest thinker there's been in science fiction, I'd say, on the theme of human evolution and cosmic evolution as a whole. Quite extraordinary literary ambition.
His daughter Mary remembers growing up in a house where the roof had been cut away to make room for a giant telescope.
Appearance of second submen, a war between two human species. third and fourth men, fifth men.
In his first novel, Last and First Men, Stapleton worked out a detailed projection of man's future incarnations over the millennia.
And then, in the year 12 million, the first biological experiments. Abolition of senility. Oh, I could do that.